Hello and welcome to what I'm hoping will be an absolutely incredible session. We're here today to talk about the Paris Call and the power of the people. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining us. My name is Raj Burley, and I am the Global Ambassador for Digital Peace Now, a global movement of thousands upon thousands of digital and cyber citizens who care about the internet and see its potential to fundamentally change the way that we see the world. We understand that it's going to help us reduce inequalities, provide education, connect us like we've never been able to connect before, and it does today. But we also know that there are significant challenges within this space, from internet transparency issues to governments and businesses taking advantage of what is an absolutely powerful tool, but to enforce power and to control civilians and people. This is something that I deeply, deeply care about. And this is something that I think Digital Peace Now and our global network of citizens really need to stand up for because of just how important it is. Protecting the fair and equal access to the internet is fundamentally crucial for our futures. Governments around the world have begun to use the internet not only to attack foreign nations and political rivals, but also control both foreign and local citizens through intimidation of online users, internet disruptions, digital taxes, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of digital technology to drive the continent's, or in this case, Africa's socioeconomic and political development. Now, obviously, we come from around the world. Like I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm sure we've got a viewership from around the world. But this impacts all of us, no matter where you are, and no matter how you engage with online connectivity. This is a serious issue that we should all care about. We all need to come together through a sense of unity, collaboration, and engagement, and align with specific goals to, I guess, achieve that peace within cyberspace. Whether it's aligning with the principles like the Santa Clara principles, or more specific to this session, reaffirming the Paris Call. Now, I guess my goal for this session, and just to be a little bit more informal, is to hear from you, all of the listeners. If you're on Zoom or if you're on YouTube or Twitter, I want you to engage with this conversation, because as the title of this session is aptly labeled, this is about the power of the people. I don't want this to be an omnidirectional conversation. I want to hear your thoughts and empower you guys to speak your minds and speak your truths, because that's how we get to where we want to go. So bring it back to the Paris Call. Developed and launched in November of 2018, the Paris Call for Peace and Security within Cyberspace is an initiative that brings people together collectively. We have over, drawing on my memory here, 70 nation states, over 370 civil society organizations, and over 700 businesses that have all set aside personal interest and said there are 9 core principles that we fundamentally believe in to protect the internet, to ensure its longevity throughout the future, and to make sure that it's safe and accessible for everyone who wants to engage and connect online. Now, access to information is obviously essential, and we have to look to our governments to protect us, not to control or to enforce power over innocent civilians. Governments currently are investing heavily in technologies like artificial intelligence, cyber offensive warfare capabilities, and advanced data mining outfits, all in the name of protecting their civilians and defending against foreign enemies. However, the reality is that innocent civilians often become the casualties, both online and offline. Digital Peace Now actually ran a report or commissioned a report, and the data was horrifying. You can jump on our website, you'll have access to it. But what we found was that over 60 nations are currently heavily investing in offensive cyber technologies. That's offensive cyber technologies. more developed nations are now focusing on AI technologies. So the space now, while obviously on the one side and for the positives, it's an immense opportunity to, I guess, move through the world in a completely different way, transcending borders with the click of a button, consuming information and knowledge from around the world. But it also comes with this unique power, the power to connect us is now being used by governments, and that's something that we cannot stand for. It's not something that we should stand for. We've seen the internet being used as a battlefield, serving as a vehicle to shut down dissent and discourse, to hide human rights violations, and control the voices of millions. Therefore, it's so important that governments are held accountable and that we call for peace within cyberspace. Now, I think a part of that is knowing how to do that, right? How to engage in these conversations. It can be all well and good to say that, yeah, we should stand up, use our voices, and hopefully connect to the problem, and, create change. But how, I guess, is the real question. Now, I think that obviously, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't have a technical background. I'm not an IT wizard or a tech nerd or anyone with a professional experience within the cyberspace. All I am is a digital native, a citizen of cyberspace, who understands that something needs to change, that we need to urge governments to come together. Like I said, call for unity and really urge others to do the same. Not isolate and fuel nationalistic cyber sentiment, but rather coalesce around a movement that demands trust and security in cyberspace. Now, if I can draw your attention just quickly to the Paris Call, feel free to Google that. It's an incredible initiative. And if we can just touch quickly on the 9 principles. The first is to protect individuals and infrastructure. So a focus on making sure that the digital world that we connect through, from banking to hospitals, everything is connected online now. We need to make sure that that is protected. Not just during wartime, but also during peaceful times, because we rely on it so much. The second principle is to fundamentally protect the internet, to prevent activity that intentionally and substantially damages the general availability or integrity of the public core of the internet. The third principle is to defend electoral processes, fundamentally ensure and strengthen our capacity to prevent malicious interference by foreign actors aimed at undermining electoral processes within our own countries through, obviously, malicious cyber activities. The fourth principle is to defend intellectual property, prevent ICT-enabled theft of intellectual property, including trade secrets or other confidential business information, with the intent of providing competitive advantages to companies or commercial sectors. The fifth principle is non-proliferation. Develop ways to prevent the proliferation of malicious software and practices intended to cause harm. The sixth is lifestyle security. So to strengthen the security of digital processes, products, and services throughout their life cycle and their supply chain. The seventh is cyber hygiene, to support the efforts to strengthen and advance cyber hygiene for all actors, everybody online. The eighth is no private hackback, to take steps to prevent non-state actors, including private sectors, from hacking back for their own purposes, or those of other non-state actors. And finally, the core, I think, principle, one that is crucial for ensuring peace in cyberspace, is international norms and regulations. So making sure that we all have a collective understanding of what is acceptable, what we can and should do, and what we shouldn't. Making sure that we all understand these fundamental rules. Because we can transcend borders, with that click of a button. AI technology is now making it so easy to traverse through cyberspace without or with little regard for distinct national borders. It's crucial that we all come together and understand what we are all happy with, what we accept. These rules are fundamentally important for ensuring the life cycle of the internet. Now, I think that there's, thanks to the internet, a huge array of opportunity for us to engage in this conversation. You know, I and obviously my partners at Digital Peace Now, Gurmahar, my co-global ambassador, we actively use online media and social media to engage with governments to say, hey, this is something that we want to stop. Our digital citizens from around the world do the same. It can be that simple. Just jumping on Twitter and saying, hashtag pick up the Paris call, and tweeting at your local governments, tweeting at digital security ministers, if your local governments have them. I know we do here in Australia, making sure that our voices aren't isolated from this conversation. I know that there's a lot out there and there's a lot that we need to be concerned about, but this is a crucial issue and it's one that we should all really care about. Using our collective voices, coming together in unity, allows us to show strength and perseverance and determination to say this is our home as well. It's not just the real world anymore. I spend just as much time online as I do offline. I have friends, family, business, school, education, all of these things online. Healthcare, social welfare, entertainment, it's all done online, or at least a huge part of it is for me. And so looking around and just watching the world happily engage in cyber warfare and then expect us to just be willing to roll with it or believe that it's in the name of the safety and security of citizens, I reject that. I fundamentally reject that notion. I would like to obviously ask for any questions throughout the session. I think I've been talking for a fair while, but obviously power to the people is dependent on everybody who's listening, who's paying attention, who's watching around the world. Feel free to tweet at me. I've got my Twitter up and live at the moment. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. I want to hear from you. I want to understand what are some of the challenges that are obviously specific to Africa, but also globally. If there's anything that sort of springs to mind, there are numerous projects around how we can collectively use our voices to speak out for specific causes. I mean, I think recently Global Citizen launched a 24-hour campaign that was streamed around the world. Using social media, using the internet, they were able to generate billions and billions of dollars of funding for issues that they cared about. And that's what I think we can do, particularly for ensuring peace and security in cyberspace, by calling on governments to support the Paris call for trust and security within cyberspace. We can ensure that it's not just us, but our kids and the generations to come truly take something out of the internet and use it to prosper, just as I have, just as we all have. I'll just jump onto the Q&A chat just to see if there are any questions. Bear with me. I can see that we have 13 participants. If you have any questions at all or would like to engage in this conversation, I think a part of this, or the goal for this session, was to really hear from the participants and what you think about what the governments, what our collective governments have been doing online, and what we can do to obviously inspire hope, peace, and security, as opposed to the inverse. So please do feel free to jot your questions down into the chat function and the Q&A section. Or just unmute your mic and jump on in.
Hey, Raj, thank you so much for doing this speed talk for us. Just in your opinion, as we're all digital citizens, what's probably the best way that we could get involved with trying to raise awareness in our governments? Is that by organizing type of coalition events, or are we trying to get involved by hosting events online? What would you recommend as the best way to engage these demographics?
Jamal, thank you so much for that question. I think it's a really good one, right? Because it's unique. I think the idea is that you look around and you do what works for you. I think for a lot of people, there's this idea that we have to obviously focus on a specific method of engaging in conversations. I don't think that's true. You know, if you have access to a Twitter account, you can jump online, obviously learn about different initiatives like the Paris Call, like the Santa Clara Principles, and obviously learn about how your individual government or governments overall are using the internet and using connected technologies, for good and obviously bad. Then obviously, tweeting at those governments to say, hey, this is my opinion, this is what I think. You can also, I've got groups of friends here in Australia that have coalesced around one of the principles, that the ninth Paris Call principle for international norms, and are working on policy papers and trying to come up with unified approaches to show our government that we want to see effective regulation of the internet within this country. We want to make sure that offensive cyber technologies don't get a significant amount of investment when there are so many other things that we could be prioritizing. There's so many options for engaging into these sorts of conversations. Obviously, I believe that the first and the primary point is to learn about it, to understand the situation and the cyber landscape as it currently exists, because it's obviously an evolving space. Contextually within the bounds of your nation or your specific government and community, it's obviously important to understand what they think and how they're proceeding to engage with this issue. But from there on, it's however you feel most comfortable, obviously putting your voice out there. I used to be a board director for the largest entirely youth-run nonprofit in this country, in Australia, UN Youth Australia. And a huge part of my work and our collective work was to inspire young people to find their voice in whatever form they can, whatever they feel comfortable with, whether it's online or in the real world, whether it's by, hosting a Twitter's chat conversation, or whether it's engaging with governments, interning with different departments of government to understand the issues more. There's so much you can do, and I think that's the beauty of the internet, right? Allows us to explore our own personal creativity. It doesn't just have to be this one channel, but I think the core of it is to understand, figure out what your perspective is, and voice it. Really use your voice. I hope that answers your question, Jamal. I think it was a bit long-winded, but hopefully you grabbed something out of that. Has the campaign recorded any success in Africa? This is coming from one of our participants. Sorry, SM, thank you for your question. So I think as of this stage, Digital Peace Now, our campaign to obviously put an end to cyber warfare, we've seen tremendous growth, around the world. So obviously within India, within Australia, within the US, within Africa and Asia. I think that just speaks to the universality of this issue. It doesn't or isn't limited to any one specific group of people, whether you're in the IT sector or not. We all rely heavily on the internet and connected technologies to make the world go by. So yeah, we have seen some growth in Africa, and obviously I think I would love to see more growth. So obviously, you can tweet at me, you can tweet at Digital Peace Now using the hashtag Stop Cyber Warfare. We can obviously engage with the Paris Call. So that has also seen some success within Africa. I believe there are a handful of civil society organizations and businesses from around the world that have formed part of or have called on support for the Paris Call, and obviously governments as well, because it's a key issue that impacts everyone, as I've said. So SM, thank you for that question. Obviously, any follow-ups, let me know. Got another question here. How can young people around the world, and especially in Africa, join the campaign and Digital Peace Now movement? Yeah, so great question. Obviously, a part of this session was not only to give you and introduce you to the notion of the Paris Call, but also hopefully inspire you, engage you, to help you understand that this is an issue that is whether you like it or not, whether you're a digital nomad and a cyber citizen, or whether you're a little bit more reserved with your online presence and communication, this all can impact you. We've seen and heard of stories of people around the world who've, as a result of hospitals being attacked or cyber attacked, not being able to have critical surgeries that they desperately needed. We've seen power stations be shut down. We've seen fuel lines being cut off, resulting in civilians not having access to fuel and losing power. So I think this is such a versatile issue. It just traverses through cyberspace and is something that we should care about. I think particularly within Africa, and obviously globally speaking, I think, like I said, the first thing to do is to educate yourself, to understand the issue and how you're personally impacted by it, to really take that leap of faith into the knowledge space and understand what you can do and how you can contribute to this conversation. So for me, it was obviously volunteering and engaging with Digital Peace Now. Obviously, I'm now the global ambassador, but I think it started with a deep passion for making sure that the internet wasn't abused and making sure that the digital world wasn't turned into a battlefield as it currently is. And I think you don't have to start huge; you can start small. It's engaging in the Twitter conversations. We have heaps of information, and we have newsletters that you can sign up for. Our blog posts are, I personally think, some of our best work. We have a lot of information coming out there about why the internet should be protected. And obviously our Twitter is updated almost daily with updates about what's going on in the cyber world, and obviously particularly relevant to cyber warfare. So engaging in that conversation is really important. And then taking some of that learning, taking some of that understanding back to your own communities so we can build what is going to be a really grassroots movement is crucial, because I think our power lies in our ability to voice our opinions, not just via elections and electoral, like voicing your opinion through voting, which I think everyone should do, also by engaging in conversations online, connecting with people around the world who share your thoughts and ideas, and who can help you, I guess, develop and contribute to the conversation further. I think a lot of the times I'm still learning. This for me is an incredible learning journey, because I get to meet really inquisitive, really passionate, really driven cyber citizens from around the world who tell me about the context in which they operate and the environment in which they're a part of. Because the cyber world is just one side of that coin. It's how are you accessing the internet? What's your day-to-day look like? Are you spending 2 hours online, 18 hours online if you're a gamer like me? All of that has an impact on how you see the cyber world and the issues within it. So thank you for that question. I hope that answers it. Any other questions for me just while we're here? Any questions about the Paris call? I think I sort of ran through that quite quickly.
So I have a question about the Paris call. You mentioned that that people are actually endorsing and supporting the Paris call. What's the process to actually endorse it? Is it actually a real call that you pick up?
No. So that's a really good question. Wouldn't that be nice if there's a physical call that we could all just answer and say, hey, stop cyber warfare? So basically, it's an initiative that was obviously launched by in partnership with the French government. Emmanuel Macron in 2018 launched this because it's obviously a very key issue around the world. Basically, it's limited to the idea is that we have states, so primarily governments and organizations, so civil society organizations, non-profits, and then obviously private businesses all come together and just show support for the Paris call. And the idea behind that is, in generating a movement around these 9 core principles, we can then, I guess, as I touched on that 9th principle, come to a consensus on how we as a collective digital community, and that's the billions of people that access and utilize the internet, want to see the cyber world be treated. Do we want to have a world that is that is convoluted and has cyber warfare as a key thing that we just deal with, and it's just a norm to jump online and not feel safe, not feel secure? Or is it something that we want to see peace and serenity within, so that we can all prosper, so that people can access the internet from anywhere in the world, and not have or be subject to misinformation and disinformation campaigns, not be subject to obviously like harassment and internet disruptions? We want to make sure that digital taxes and laws that inhibit the development of business through digital technologies are abolished. So I think obviously it's not a physical call, but it's more a call to support the initiative. You can do this by jumping onto their website. So there's a big button that says support the call. So if you're a business, an entity, or a government, you can obviously show that you're interested in making sure that the digital world remains cyber warfare free, and is just an open and positive environment for everyone. Any other questions? I know that's a lot of information to digest. Oh, another one. Countries in the global south compared to the global north are still on the path of development when it comes to digital infrastructure, which makes us less vulnerable to cyber attacks. Why should we care about the cause? That's a really good question. It's a really good question. I think obviously not to delve into the nuances and complexities of infrastructure and development. I think what we're witnessing is leapfrogging within that development, right? So that trajectory is not standard anymore. We don't follow this path of ignoring the internet and obviously not engaging with it. Like the infrastructure and connected technologies have sort of jumped ahead in that development. So we've seen the access or the advent of smartphones that are now widely accessible, and a lot of people within the global south have sort of adopted technologies to enhance their day-to-day lives and to obviously generate income and revenue and develop themselves further. So I think obviously digital infrastructure and technologies, they are the future. It's inevitable. It is literally it's scientifically researched that we're moving to a more digitally connected society than we have ever been before. I personally believe that we are fundamentally on the precipice of the collision of obviously the biosphere and the technosphere, so much so that we're integrating our evolutions. I don't go any more than sorry, you can't actually see it, but a few meters from my phone. It's an extension to who I am. And I think that can be, or that is true for a lot of people around the world, whether you're in obviously developed nations or nations that are still developing their infrastructure and supporting their citizens grow. So I think why you should care about the issue is because now is the best time to care about it. We are currently putting in, and if you are a part of that global south, you're developing infrastructure and building for the future. Digital technologies are the future. So you want to make sure that the infrastructure that is built is safe, secure, stable, sturdy, and obviously is protected well into the future. And so, it's not just about developing that infrastructure, but also making sure there's policy and support behind it that obviously eradicates the threat of cyber warfare and ensures that the digital world is a safe world for everyone. Whether you're a gamer like me, or you're a politician, or you're a government, or you're someone who's learning things just online, you're just an avid YouTube consumer, doesn't matter. The fact is that we should all care about this issue, because whether we like it or not, it's our future. Yeah, our future is connected. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. It was a really good question. Any other questions so far?
One more question for you, Raj. Just, we're talking about cyber peace and digital peace. Just in your opinion, what does cyber peace really look like, even on a regional scale and even on a global scale?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. It's weird. Like I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, because I don't think we've really experienced cyber peace. I think the threat of cyber warfare has always been present. Throughout 2020 and 2021, we saw significant increases in the number of cyber attacks that have been. I mean, the world was battling a global pandemic, and hospitals and medical research institutions, these organizations tasked with protecting us and obviously finding a cure, not a cure, a vaccine, were attacked, were the subject of numerous cyber attacks, more so than they were pre-pandemic. I think that is really, really scary. I think that is, like fundamentally, it's terrifying given just how integrated technology is in our lives. Even outside of that, I'm sure that if you're involved in this space or you're somewhat connected online, you've heard about cyber attacks on meat producers and oil manufacturers, like petroleum companies. We've seen cyber attacks on banks, on power stations, on businesses, entertainment companies. A lot of that, what it makes it feel like is the cyberverse is just quite hostile, and can be quite scary for anyone who's trying to access the internet. Even from a personal perspective, practicing cyber hygiene is really important, and making sure your passwords are up to date, because there are people out there, and scarily governments out there, who will take advantage of that fact and of our desire to be connected online. In an idyllic utopian vision that I have for this campaign, and why what I'm striving for, is to have, I guess, fundamentally, first and foremost, is an international set of rules and regulations that we all agree upon, to say that, yeah, this is why the internet should be protected. This is what is acceptable behavior online. This is unacceptable behavior online. And then to come up with international laws that are actually enforceable, to make sure that we don't see elevated instances of cyber attacks, because that's what's happening. We're seeing growth in number of cyber attacks as opposed to the inverse. And as we get more connected, that's going to keep going. So I think it starts with just obviously collectively, all of us understanding our place online and what we can do to protect it, and obviously the rules that are going to govern this space. Just as these rules and rights apply to us in the real world, I think we should have a similar level of, I guess, rigor when it comes to the rules and regulations that apply in the cyber world. Obviously, I think it'd be great if we could see, no government-sponsored hacking. I think that would be a really good start point. Obviously, governments are meant to represent the will of our people, or their citizens. And I don't think that happens, particularly within this space. Obviously, like nations, as I've said before, are investing into offensive cyber capabilities. I just don't think that that's something that we want to see moving into the future, given just how much time we spend in the cyber world. So I'd love to see investments into defensive cyber technologies, making sure that we focus on data protection, data rights, and obviously focusing on civilians and access to the internet, and making sure that when those civilians do access the internet, they're safe and protected. So I think at multiple levels, whether it's individually or regionally or internationally, given just how connected we are, we can experience and feel the impacts of these attacks. So I definitely think that it's an important issue that we should all, really care about. Any other questions?
Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about, I feel like you've talked a lot about why we should be worried, but maybe some of the specific examples. I don't know that, we can all name a lot of attacks that have happened in recent years. What are some of the biggest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for asking. So in terms of the biggest, I'm sure we've probably heard about WannaCry, which was a huge ransomware attack that occurred, I think it was about 2014, if my memory serves me correctly. So obviously ransomware is a quite a malicious bit of software. And obviously it's nondescript, so it traverses through systems quite freely. So I think that's another issue with obviously cyber warfare, is a lot of these technologies aren't limited to specific entities. They can sort of break boundaries quite easily. We had NotPetya, which was a cyber attack in Ukraine that took down obviously like a power station, but also ancillary systems and critical infrastructure like banking, and I think the postal service also went down. So obviously these huge large-scale attacks have massive ripple effects. Hundreds of millions of dollars was lost due to the WannaCry attack. And that's not including, I think that's direct impact, right? Not including indirect costs, which I think early estimates had around billions of dollars, just given the reach and scale of those attacks. We've seen attacks, and it doesn't just have to be critical infrastructure. We've also seen attacks on private businesses. So the Sony attack, which currently is attributed to North Korea. So intellectual property has also been a huge target, and I think that's the scary thing, right? There are so many avenues to attack both civilians, governments, businesses, infrastructure, and I think that's why supporting something like the Paris Call, an initiative that hopes to bring all stakeholders together, so civil society, governments, businesses, to say this is not something that we can allow, is really, really important and is crucial. I think more relevant to the United States, we've recently saw the SolarWinds attack. We've saw attack on JBS, which is a meat supplier. We saw an attack on, I forget the oil company's name, but it was in the East Coast of the United States of America. So these attacks are global. Let's be really clear about that. I mean, I've experienced attacks here in Australia. We've had our education system was recently attacked. Again, young students are online on Zoom in lockdown, trying to continue their education and learn. And we're seeing attacks on critical infrastructure like that has a real tangible impact to civilians, but underage young students. So yeah, I think not to be an alarmist. I think I definitely don't want the message of this talk to be that we need to focus on the negatives, because far be it. There's been huge accomplishments made in the fields of reducing inequalities, connecting people from around the world, sharing stories, and creating real passionate change. These are all of the positives that come with the internet, and it's what we should be focusing on. It's what we should be aiming for and striving for. And I think a part of that is obviously acknowledging that there is going to be a dark side to, or the utility of this system and these systems. And it's our responsibility as cyber citizens to call it out and say, no, this is unacceptable. I hope that answers your question. I think it was a bit vague. I do apologize. I don't have any examples specific to Africa, as I think most of our viewership is located. But I will investigate further, and I'll draft up a blog post. So I'll put it all together and hopefully have that onto our website in the next week or so. So do keep checking on our website. Do keep engaging on our Twitter to see that. And we I think often update our Twitter with attacks and cyber attacks that have happened around the world. So it's always important to obviously learn and be aware of what's actually going on. I hope that answers your question. So thank you so much for that. Cool. And I think if there's any more questions, please feel free to fire away.
Raj, one last question. What's your Twitter, and how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, so yeah, great question. My Twitter is @BurleyRaj. That's at BurliRaj. Obviously, we also have the Digital Peace Now Twitter, so @Digital Peace Now. And you can find us on our hashtags, hashtag stop cyber warfare. And for the Paris call, hashtag pick up the Paris call. Oh, got a question here. Also, can you just more? Yes. Where can we find more information about Digital Peace Now? So just jump onto Google, Digital Peace Now. First link that should pop up is to our website. So we have a whole heap of information about there. So contextualizing this issue, who I am, more about my amazing co-global ambassador, Gurmahar Kaur. We also have information about our board and all of the cool initiatives that we're working on. But again, as I said, something that I think is really cool is our blog posts. So a lot of fresh content about the positives and the negatives about cyber warfare and cyberspace, and not there's a positive to cyber warfare. The positives about the internet and how it's being used to, I guess, create change and share and spread laughter and joy. But also, obviously, it's a really good resource for learning about some of the cyber attacks that I mentioned and some that I haven't, and obviously gaining perspective from people who have been victims of cyber attacks in the real world. So not just my accounts were hacked or I lost some critical information, but rather I couldn't have surgery because the hospital that I was supposed to have that surgery in was attacked. So I highly recommend checking out that invaluable resource. Cool. Cool. I think that's dried up all the questions. To our viewership around the world, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and the Digital Peace Now team. It's always exciting for me to be here and to talk about something that I deeply, deeply care about. I hope you've taken something away from this conversation. And if you have any questions at all, I honestly welcome it all. So please do reach out to me via Twitter or our website. I'm more than happy to take any questions that you might have if you weren't able to jump onto the Zoom. So thank you for that. I'd also like to just thank CEPISA and FIF Africa for allowing me to share my voice and to speak out about the power of the people. I think it's really cool to be a part of an event like this, and I'm eternally grateful. Yeah, so thank you to everyone. And there is no peace without digital peace. So thank you.